Not every danger wears a scary face. Sometimes it hides behind bright colors and sweet music, smiling at you until it's too late. That's how the trouble started for Daniel. But before I tell you about the day his life changed, let me take you back to where it all began. Daniel was a 15-year-old boy living in a lively African town, the kind of place where the streets buzzed with the sounds of life, hawkers shouting prices, children laughing in the distance, and the faint hum of old generators fighting the evening darkness. His family's home sat in a dusty compound painted in faded cream, with a mango tree leaning at one corner. When the wind blew, the branches swayed like an old man nodding in slow agreement. Daniel lived with his father, a strict but loving man who worked as a bus driver, and his mother, who sold vegetables and smoked fish in the market. He also had a little sister, Anita, who was 9 and loved following him everywhere. Every morning in their home followed the same rhythm. At the crack of dawn, Daniel would hear the rooster crowing in the neighbor's yard. Then came the sharp clang of his mother's pot lids in the kitchen and the smell of frying akara drifting into his small bedroom. He would drag himself out of bed, rub the sleep from his eyes, and put on his blue school uniform, ironed with sharp creases his mother was proud of. Outside, Anita would be tying her red scarf, ready to follow him to school like a little shadow. Life wasn't perfect. Money was tight. His father's salary barely covered school fees, food, and rent. Sometimes, Daniel had to help his mother sell vegetables in the market after school, just so they could have enough for the week. But there was one thing Daniel loved more than anything else: technology. If you gave Daniel an old radio, he could take it apart and put it back together before you even boiled water for tea. He would fix neighbors' broken torches, connect cables for people who didn't know left from right, and show his friends how to get songs on their small MP3 players. The truth was, Daniel was curious, dangerously curious. Whenever he saw someone with a smartphone, his eyes lit up. He loved the smooth glass screens, the colorful icons, the way you could press something and make magic happen. His father had a small button phone, the kind with a flashlight and no internet. Daniel had tried many times to convince him to get a smartphone, but his father would shake his head. "Those things will make you forget your books," he would say. "Better you read real pages than press screens all day." Still, Daniel's mind wandered. He imagined playing games with bright explosions and fast cars, watching videos that felt like tiny movies in your palm, chatting with friends without shouting across the street. After school, he sometimes visited his best friend Peter, who had an old Android phone. Peter's father had given it to him when he upgraded to a newer one, and to Daniel, it was like holding a piece of treasure. The two boys would huddle together under Peter's mother's mango tree, laughing as they played simple games. Sometimes they took turns. Sometimes they argued about who would hold the phone next. To Daniel, this was more exciting than any football match. At home, his father didn't understand why he liked technology so much. "When I was your age," his father would say, "I was climbing palm trees to fetch fruit, not wasting time with gadgets." But his mother, though cautious, would sometimes smile and say, "This boy's mind is sharp. Maybe one day it will help us." Daniel believed it too. In his heart, he thought technology would be his bridge to a better future. But as every elder in Africa knows, the same water that cooks yam can also drown a child if he's not careful. And Daniel was about to step into deep waters without knowing how far they went. That Saturday afternoon, while Anita chased chickens in the compound and his mother roasted corn at the gate, Daniel sat on a wooden bench, tapping his foot impatiently. Something was about to happen. Something that would give him exactly what he'd been wishing for, and open a door he wouldn't be able to close so easily. The air was thick with the smell of roasted corn and the sound of Afrobeats from a neighbor's speaker, The sun hung heavy in the sky, turning the road outside into a sheet of gold. And somewhere, not too far away, the first thread of trouble was already making its way toward him. Some blessings come like rain after a long drought. Others come like sweet honey hiding a bitter seed inside. For Daniel, the day he got his first smartphone felt like a miracle. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. Church service had just ended. The sun was bright, the street was busy, and the smell of puff puff mixed with fried plantain floated in the air as women sold snacks to people walking home. Daniel walked beside his father, half listening to the conversation about the pastor's sermon, when they passed an electronics shop. Right there in the glass display, he saw it. A small but shiny Android phone. Not the latest model, but perfect in his eyes. His steps slowed. His eyes stayed fixed on it. The bright screen was on, showing a wallpaper of a glowing sunset. The phone seemed to call his name. His father noticed. "What are you looking at?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Nothing, just looking," Daniel replied quickly, but inside, his heart was beating fast. That evening, after lunch, Daniel was in the backyard washing plates when his father called him into the sitting room. On the small table sat a familiar box, the same one from the shop window. "Daniel," his father began, "you are growing. You help your mother in the market. You take your schoolwork seriously. I think it's time you had something of your own, but use it well." Daniel's eyes widened. For me?" His father nodded. "It's secondhand, but it works fine. I don't want to see you wasting time on nonsense. Remember, a tool can build a house or burn it down. It depends on how you use it." Daniel could barely contain himself. He opened the box carefully like it was gold. The phone was small, black, with a few scratches on the back, but to him it was perfect. He held it in both hands, turning it over and over. The screen lit up when he pressed the button and a soft melody played. His own phone, no more borrowing from Peter, no more peeping at other people's screens. That night after dinner, he sat on the edge of his bed exploring every icon. There was a camera. He took silly pictures of Anita making faces. There was music. He found some old Afrobeat songs preloaded on the memory card. There was even an FM radio app. He listened to the late-night love program until he fell asleep. The next day, the news spread fast. At school, Peter's jaw dropped. "Daniel, you didn't tell me you were getting a phone." Daniel grinned. "I didn't know either. My dad surprised me." By lunchtime, half their classmates had gathered around to see it. Some admired it, some teased him for how small it was compared to newer models. But Daniel didn't care. It was his. At home, his mother was more cautious. "Daniel, remember, a phone is not food. It won't fill your stomach," she warned as she stirred a pot of jollof rice in the kitchen. The aroma filled the small room, warm and rich. "Use it to help yourself, not to harm yourself." "Yes, Mama," he replied, though his mind was already racing with all the things he could do with it. For the first week, Daniel was careful. He took photos of school notes, listened to music while sweeping the compound, and even used the calculator for his homework. But curiosity is like fire in dry grass. Once it starts, it spreads quickly. One afternoon, as he sat under the mango tree outside, Peter leaned in and whispered, "There's this game. Everyone is playing it. It's so good. You can download it for free." Daniel's eyes lit up. "What's it called?" Peter smiled mysteriously. "I'll show you tomorrow. Just make sure you have some space on your phone." That night, Daniel lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The sound of crickets filled the night air. Anita was fast asleep, breathing softly beside him. He thought about the mysterious game. He imagined bright colors, fast action, exciting challenges. He could almost hear the music from it in his head. He didn't know it yet. But tomorrow, when Peter would show him that game, a door would open, and stepping through it would change everything. Some traps don't have sharp teeth. Some come wrapped in music, color, and excitement, and you only realize you're caught when it's too late. The next afternoon after school, Daniel walked quickly to Peter's house. The sun was still high, casting long shadows of palm trees across the sandy road. Women were returning from the market with baskets balanced on their heads, and the smell of fried plantain drifted from a nearby roadside stall. Peter was waiting for him under the big mango tree. His face carried the same mischievous smile from yesterday. "You're ready?" Peter asked, patting his own pocket where his phone was kept. "Yes," Daniel replied, holding his new phone tightly. His heartbeat quickened, part excitement, part curiosity. Peter led him inside, to the small sitting room with a ceiling fan turning slowly above their heads. The television in the corner played an old Nollywood film, but neither boy paid it any attention. Peter sat cross-legged on the floor and opened his phone. "The game is called Kingdom Quest," he whispered, as if saying the name too loudly might make it disappear. "You build your own army, fight battles, and unlock treasures. But the best part? You can play with people all over the world." Daniel's eyes widened. "With people in other countries?" "Yes," Peter grinned. "Not just computer enemies. Real people. They can attack you, and you can attack them." Peter connected Daniel's phone to his hotspot and began downloading the game. The progress bar crawled slowly, but with every percent that filled, Daniel's excitement grew. Finally, the icon appeared, a golden crown against a red background. "Go on," Peter urged. "Open it." Daniel tapped it. A burst of trumpets played through the tiny speaker. The screen lit up with castles, knights, and shining coins. A deep, dramatic voice welcomed him. "Welcome, warrior. Your kingdom awaits." For the next hour, the boys sat huddled together, exploring the game. Daniel learned how to build walls, train soldiers, and send them to battle. Every time he won, golden coins poured into his virtual chest. Every time he lost, a loud defeat banner flashed, and he felt an itch to try again. He forgot the time. He forgot his school bag lying in the corner. He forgot the jollof rice his mother said she would keep for him at home. When the sun began to dip, Peter finally said, "You'd better go before your dad comes looking for you." That night after dinner, Daniel didn't touch his homework. He went straight to his room, lay on the bed, and opened Kingdom Quest again. The colors were brighter in the dark room. The music filled his ears. The game even sent him messages. "Your troops need you," and "An enemy is attacking your walls." His fingers tapped quickly on the screen, sending soldiers into battle. Time slipped away like sand through fingers. The next day at school, Daniel could hardly wait for break time. He and Peter compared their progress. New weapons, new treasures, new victories. "If you keep playing every day, you'll level up fast," Peter told him. "The top players even get rewards. You can chat with other players, join their clans. It's like having a whole world inside your phone." Daniel liked that idea. A whole world where he was a hero, not just a boy helping his mother in the market. At first, it seemed harmless. He played during break time, after chores, and before bed. He told himself it was just for fun, a way to relax. But already small changes were beginning. When his mother asked him to fetch water from the well, he said, "I'll do it later," without looking up from his screen. When Anita tried to peek at what he was playing, he snapped, "Go away," more harshly than he meant. Still, Daniel didn't see any danger. To him, Kingdom Quest was exciting, rewarding, and better than anything on television. In fact, he started setting alarms to wake up early. When his father knocked on the door in the mornings, he quickly pretended to be getting dressed. And so, day by day, the game's grip tightened. Daniel didn't notice the way his father frowned when he stayed longer in his room. He didn't notice how Anita stopped coming to play with him. He didn't notice the pile of homework growing untouched on his desk. Because in his mind, there was only one thing that mattered: winning the next battle. The fire had started. It was small now, easy to put out if he wanted to. But like an elder once said, if you don't stamp out the spark, it will burn down the whole farm. And Daniel, He didn't even know the spark was there. A seed doesn't grow into a tree overnight. It starts small, quietly pushing roots deeper, until one day you look up and realize it has taken over your garden. That's how Kingdom Quest began to take over Daniel's life. At first, it was harmless. He would play after school just for an hour. But soon, that 1 hour became 2. 2 became 3. Then he started sneaking in short games in the middle of his chores. The first to notice was his mother. One Saturday morning, she called from the kitchen, "Daniel, go and fetch water before the sun gets too hot." "In a minute, Mama," he replied without looking up from his phone. 5 minutes passed, then 10. By the time he finally dragged himself to the well, the queue was long and the sun was blazing. His mother frowned when he returned, sweat dripping from his face. "Daniel, when I call you, you answer quickly. The phone will not run away." "Yes, Mama," he mumbled, but in his heart he wasn't sorry. He was just thinking about the next battle. At school, his attention began to slip. The teacher's voice became background noise, like the hum of the old ceiling fan. Instead of copying notes, Daniel would hide his phone under the desk, his fingers moving quickly on the screen. Peter, sitting beside him, would whisper, "Quick, quick! Your walls are under attack." Daniel would grin and play on, barely noticing the chalk tapping sharply on the board. Even family time started to fade. Before, in the evenings, Daniel would sit with his father on the wooden bench outside, listening to old stories about his father's days as a young bus conductor in the city. Sometimes they would watch the neighborhood football match together. But now, when his father called, "Daniel, come and sit with me," he would answer, "I'm busy," without even looking up. The truth was, his busy meant building another virtual wall or upgrading his army in the game. Anita, his little sister, felt it too. Before, Daniel would help her with homework or play football with her in the sandy yard. But now when she came to his room, he would say, "Not now," or simply turn away. The laughter they used to share slowly disappeared. One evening, she asked quietly, "Daniel, do you like the game more than me?" He laughed it off, but the question stayed in the air like the smell of rain before a storm. Meals also became an interruption. He would come to the table with his phone in hand, tapping the screen between bites of rice and beans. His father would glare and say, "Keep that thing away while eating," but as soon as the plates were cleared, Daniel would be back at it. The signs of change were everywhere, little cracks spreading through his daily life. The once sharp creases on his school uniform began to fade because he no longer cared to iron it. His shoes, once polished on Sunday evenings, now carried a layer of dust. The neat handwriting in his notebooks turned into rushed scribbles because his mind was already thinking about the next game level. And the strangest thing? He didn't even see the change himself. One Sunday after church, his mother watched him from across the yard. Anita was playing alone, kicking a small ball against the wall. His father was fixing a broken chair. But Daniel sat in the corner, hunched over, face lit by the glow of the screen. She sighed and said to herself, "This boy is here with us, but his mind is somewhere else." It's like the elders say, the sheep that follows the shadow of the lion too long will forget the taste of grass. Daniel was following the shadow of Kingdom Quest, step by step, without realizing the grass of his real life was drying up. The game had stopped being just fun. It had become the center of his thoughts, the thing he reached for first in the morning and the last thing he touched at night. And slowly, quietly, the balance in his life was tipping. The road ahead was getting darker, but Daniel was too busy chasing virtual victories to see it. When a river floods, it doesn't care what it sweeps away. It takes everything in its path, the strong, the weak, the precious, the useless. That's how Kingdom Quest began to sweep through Daniel's life. The game had stopped being a pastime. It was no longer something he played after chores or before bed. It had become the thing his day revolved around. He woke up thinking about it. He went to bed thinking about it. And in between, every free moment and some stolen ones were spent inside its bright, endless battles. It started with small lies. One Wednesday evening, his father came home early and asked, "Daniel, have you done your homework?" "Yes, Daddy," Daniel said quickly, without even looking up from his phone. But the truth? His school books were still untouched inside his bag. He had been in his room for hours, fighting off an enemy clan that attacked while he was at school. The game had sent him a notification, and Daniel couldn't rest until he struck back. At night, he began sneaking to play. He would wait until the house was silent, the dim yellow bulb in the corridor switched off. Anita would be asleep beside him, her breathing steady. Then, Daniel would slide the phone under his pillow, pull the blanket over his head, and play in the small cave of light. The sound of swords clashing and victory trumpets became his midnight lullaby. Sometimes, he stayed up so late that when morning came, his eyes felt heavy and his body moved slowly, like someone carrying an invisible load. One Saturday morning, his mother gave him $500 to buy tomatoes and onions from the market. On the way, Daniel passed a roadside kiosk that sold phone data. He stopped. The game had been slow lately because he was out of data. The shopkeeper's voice echoed in his head. 100 naira, small bundle, enough for a few days. Before he could think twice, he used 200 to buy data. With the remaining 300, he bought fewer tomatoes than his mother asked for. When he returned home, she frowned. "Why is the bag so light? I told you the money was enough." Daniel shrugged, pretending not to notice her suspicion. But inside, he felt a strange mix of guilt and relief. Guilt for lying, relief because now the game would run smoothly again. Even Peter noticed the change. Before, they used to talk and laugh while playing. Now, Daniel hardly looked up from his screen. "Daniel, you don't even listen when I talk anymore," Peter said one afternoon. "I'm focusing," Daniel replied sharply, eyes glued to the game. But the truth was, it wasn't focus. It was obsession. His father's patience began to wear thin. One evening, as the family sat for dinner, Daniel kept the phone on his lap under the table, tapping away between bites. "Daniel?" his father barked, slamming his hand on the table. "Put that thing down now." Daniel froze, heart pounding. Slowly, he placed the phone on the table. His father's eyes were hard. "I bought it for you to learn and grow, not to become blind to the world around you," his father warned. But in Daniel's mind, all he could think about was whether his virtual kingdom was safe. The deeper he sank into the game, the more the real world faded. The evening laughter of children playing football in the street no longer tempted him. The smell of his mother's cooking became just background to the game's music. The sound of Anita knocking on his door became an interruption rather than an invitation. It's like the elders say, when the drumbeat changes, the dance must change, whether you want it to or not. Daniel's life dance had changed. He no longer moved to the rhythm of school, family, and friends. His steps were now led by the beat of Kingdom Quest. And somewhere deep inside, without realizing it, Daniel had crossed the line. He was no longer just a boy who enjoyed a game. He was a boy who needed it. The harm of a habit is often invisible until someone wise points it out. But even then, some ears are too stubborn to listen. It was a warm Sunday afternoon, the kind where the air feels heavy as if the sun had laid its full weight on the town. From the kitchen came the rich aroma of fried plantain and pepper stew. Somewhere in the street, children laughed as they kicked an old football between themselves. But inside the small living room, Daniel sat on the couch, his phone clutched in both hands, eyes locked to the screen. His thumbs moved like they were being chased by a spirit, fast, tense, desperate to win. His mother, Grace, had been watching him from the corner of her eye for days. He no longer helped her slice vegetables for dinner. He no longer fetched water from the compound tap without complaining. Even the rooster's crow in the morning could not pull him out of bed unless it was for his game. That Sunday, an old family friend named Uncle Joseph came to visit. He was not a blood relative, but in African families, respect was given to elders who had walked through life before you. He was tall, with deep lines across his forehead and eyes that seemed to see straight through you. He had once been a schoolteacher, and his words always carried weight. "Daniel," Uncle Joseph called as he lowered himself into the armchair. "Come here, my boy." Daniel, without looking up from his phone, muttered, "Yes, sir." "Not yes, sir, with your head buried in that thing," Uncle Joseph said, voice calm but firm. "Come here properly." Daniel sighed, paused the game, and walked over, but his fingers itched to return to the screen. Uncle Joseph studied him for a moment. "You play this game too much," he began. "It is swallowing your time, and when time is gone, my boy, it never comes back." Daniel shifted his weight, feeling impatient. "It's just for fun, Uncle. I can stop anytime." Uncle Joseph chuckled softly. "Ah, that is what every man says before the river carries him away. You think you are in control, but the current is stronger than you." Grace joined the conversation. "Daniel, I've been telling you, help me in the house first. Your schoolwork is waiting. Even your younger sister complains you don't talk to her anymore." Uncle Joseph leaned forward. "My boy, there is a proverb, the child who will not hear will feel. If you continue like this, the game will not only take your time, it will take your mind." Daniel frowned. "How can a game take my mind?" "It's not that serious." Uncle Joseph's eyes narrowed slightly. "When I was teaching, I had a student like you. Smart boy, bright as the morning sun. Then he discovered a game in the arcade. Every day he skipped homework to play. At first, it seemed harmless, but soon he failed his exams, lost his place in school, and started lying to everyone around him. The game had stolen his focus, and once focus is gone, life starts to slip away." Daniel looked down, but in his chest, a small voice whispered, "That won't happen to me." The old man placed a hand on his shoulder. "Young people think danger always comes with a knife or a thief's mask. But sometimes, danger is colorful, fun, even free. It smiles while it destroys you." Grace nodded. "Daniel, you're playing every free moment. Even at night, your eyes are always tired. This isn't normal." Daniel stepped back and forced a laugh. "Okay, I hear you. I'll cut down." But deep inside, he wasn't ready to let go. He had battles to win, levels to unlock. The game still called to him like a drumbeat in the distance. And so, while Uncle Joseph sipped his tea and Grace stirred her pot, Daniel slipped the phone back into his hands. The bright colors lit up his face. He promised himself he'd only play for a few minutes. But you and I know, a few minutes in the world of temptation can last a lifetime. The harm did not knock gently. It came like a strong wind, sweeping away the small pillars of balance that still stood in Daniel's life. It started with the exams. The week was hot, the kind of heat that made the chalk in the teacher's hand break easily. The schoolyard smelled of dust and sweat. Children fanned themselves with folded pieces of cardboard while waiting to enter the exam hall. Daniel was among them, but his mind was not. He had stayed up the night before, eyes glued to his phone screen, fingers dancing across it until his vision blurred. The game had released a special event that would end by morning, and he just had to win the rare prize. So, while others revised their notes, Daniel fought virtual battles in a glowing, pixelated world. That morning, as he walked into the exam hall, his head felt heavy. He yawned, blinking against the light. When the invigilator handed him the answer sheet, the words swam before his eyes. Questions that once seemed easy now felt like riddles spoken in a strange language. He scribbled something down, erased it, then scribbled again. Minutes slipped away like water between his fingers. By the time the bell rang, Daniel had answered less than half of the paper. The results came a week later. The air in the school compound buzzed with nervous chatter as the teachers posted the list on the notice board. Daniel pushed his way through the crowd of students, his heart pounding. He found his name and then saw the score. He had failed. Not just one subject, but two. His average had dropped so low that the school placed him on academic warning. The whispers started before he even left the compound. "Ah, Daniel? I thought he was one of the bright ones. Maybe he just got lazy." No, I heard he's always on his phone these days. The news reached home before he did. When Daniel entered the sitting room, his father was sitting on the worn brown sofa, his work bag still beside him. The ceiling fan hummed softly, but the air was thick with silence. "Daniel," his father said slowly, "do you want to tell me what happened?" Daniel swallowed hard. It's just one bad term. I'll do better next time." His father's voice hardened. "One bad term can turn into a bad future if you keep walking this road. This house values hard work, not excuses." His mother came from the kitchen, her wrapper tied tightly around her waist, the smell of jollof rice trailing behind her. "Daniel," she said, her voice softer but full of worry, "we have given you trust. What have you done with it?" He couldn't answer. His gaze dropped to the tiled floor, where a small crack ran like a scar between the tiles. But the downfall didn't end with the exams. One Saturday morning, while Daniel was playing the game in his room, a notification popped up. It was an in-game message. "Buy coins now. Limited offer." Without thinking, he clicked it. The app asked for payment, and in his drowsy state, Daniel used his father's debit card number, something he had seen him type before. It was just a small purchase, or so he thought, but the game charged more than expected. By the time his father checked his bank statement the following week, several charges had been made. That evening, Daniel heard his father's voice boom from the living room. "Daniel, come here." He stepped out, his phone still in his hand. His father held up the bank statement. "Did you use my card?" Daniel froze. I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to?" His father's voice rose. "Do you know how hard I work for every naira in this house? And you waste it on a game?" The disappointment in his father's eyes was heavier than any slap. His mother just shook her head, muttering under her breath, "A child who doesn't listen will soon learn from pain." That night, Daniel lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The hum of the fan was the only sound in the room. The phone lay beside him, still glowing faintly. But for the first time, the bright colors on the screen did not excite him. He felt the weight of his failure, at school, at home, and in his own heart. The game had promised fun, but all it had brought was shame. In Africa, we say, when the drumbeat changes, the dancer must also change his steps. But Daniel, blind to the new rhythm of his life, had kept dancing to the same dangerous tune. And now, the music had brought him to the edge of trouble. Sometimes, the loudest wake-up call is not the sound of an alarm clock. It is the silence that follows when everyone has stopped believing in you. Daniel sat alone on the wooden bench at the far corner of their compound. The evening breeze carried the smell of fried plantain from the next house, but it did nothing to lift his mood. The sun had almost set, painting the sky in a deep orange glow. Children laughed and chased a worn-out football down the dusty street. Their voices echoed through the neighborhood, mixing with the sound of a hawker calling, "Bowlie! Hot bowlie!" But Daniel didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the ground, his school bag still on his back. The exam results had been released that morning. And for the first time since he started secondary school, Daniel's name was near the very bottom of the list. He could still hear the whispers from classmates. "Ah, Daniel? He used to be among the best. Ever since he got that phone, see where he is now." Their voices had stung like mosquito bites that wouldn't stop itching. When he reached home, his father didn't shout. He didn't even scold him. He just looked at Daniel for a long moment, shook his head slowly, and went inside. That quiet disappointment, it cut deeper than any harsh word could. Later that evening, as the compound settled into the usual rhythm, mothers cooking dinner, the smell of smoke and spices in the air, Daniel heard a voice from the veranda. "Daniel, my boy, come here." It was Mr. Johnson, their elderly neighbor. Everyone in the area respected him. His hair was white like the top of a coconut, and his eyes always seemed to look right into your thoughts. Daniel walked over, dragging his feet. Mr. Johnson patted the wooden stool beside him. "Sit." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds, crickets chirping, distant car horns, the hiss of frying oil from somewhere nearby. Finally, Mr. Johnson spoke. "Do you know the story of the fisherman and the shiny hook?" Daniel shook his head. The old man leaned forward, his voice slow and steady. "There was once a fisherman who went to the river every day. He caught fish, fed his family, and everyone was happy. One day, he saw a hook made of pure silver. It was so beautiful that he forgot all about his nets. He spent all his time polishing it, admiring it, showing it to people. But while he was busy with the shiny hook, his nets rotted, his boat leaked, and his family went hungry." He paused and looked straight into Daniel's eyes. "My boy, that phone is your shiny hook." Daniel's chest felt heavy. I didn't mean for things to get this bad," he muttered. Mr. Johnson nodded slowly. "Nobody ever means to drown. But if you keep walking into the river without looking, the water will not ask for your permission before it pulls you under." The words sank deep into Daniel's mind. He thought about the hours he had wasted, the lies he had told, the nights he stayed awake playing that game until his eyes burned. He thought about his mother's tired face, his father's silence, and now, this crushing failure in school. It was as if the game had been pulling the strings of his life, and he had let it. "Mr. Johnson, do you think I can fix this?" Daniel's voice was small, almost like a child's. The old man smiled faintly. "Of course, the river can swallow you, yes, but it can also wash you clean if you are willing to swim the right way." He placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You must decide, Daniel, which is more important, that game or the life you are meant to live?" Daniel didn't answer immediately, but inside him, something shifted. For the first time in months, he felt the weight of his choices and the possibility of change. The breeze grew cooler, carrying the smell of jollof rice from his mother's pot. Somewhere nearby, a baby cried, and a radio played an old high life song. Life was still moving, with or without him, and Daniel knew in that moment that he had to move with it. Tomorrow would not be the same. The following Monday morning, Daniel woke before the rooster crowed. The phone was no longer on his pillow. It was locked away in the small cupboard above the television, the place his father kept important things. He sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the thin curtain that fluttered in the soft harmattan breeze. For the first time in many weeks, he didn't reach for the glowing screen. Instead, he reached for his school bag. Downstairs, the smell of fresh akara and fried yam filled the air. His mother stood over the frying pan, her wrapper tied tightly around her waist, humming a church hymn. When she saw him dressed early, she raised an eyebrow. "Daniel, is this you?" she asked with a small smile. He looked down shyly. "Yes, Mama. I want to go to school early today." She didn't say much, just handed him a plate. But her eyes softened, and he knew she understood what he was trying to do. At school, Daniel kept his head low and his mind open. The mathematics teacher was revising for the end-of-term test, and for the first time in months, the numbers on the board didn't look like strange symbols. He copied every step into his exercise book, even raising his hand to ask questions. During break, his friends pulled out their phones to play the same game that had nearly ruined him. "Come on, Daniel," one of them said. "Just one round." He shook his head, adjusting his tie. "No, I'm done with it." They laughed at first, but then one of them looked at him and said, "You look different, Sha, like you're free." He smiled quietly. Maybe he was. That evening, he went to see his father in the backyard. The old man was fixing a broken chair, the smell of wood shavings in the air. Daniel stood there for a moment, unsure how to start. "Papa, I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice low. His father looked up, his hands pausing on the hammer. "Sorry for what?" "For everything. For lying, for failing, for wasting time." The hammer fell to the ground. His father sighed and sat down, motioning for Daniel to sit too. "You see," his father began, "in our time it was not phone games, but street games. We too knew how to waste time. But my father told me something. A boy who wastes his daylight will stumble in the dark. I didn't listen, and I paid for it. Daniel swallowed hard. I don't want to stumble again. His father placed a hand on his shoulder. Then you must walk carefully now. I forgive you. But you must prove to yourself, not just to me, that you can control your time. From that day, Daniel made small changes. He set a timetable for his studies. He helped his mother with evening chores, pounding yam, fetching water from the well. He joined the school football practice again, running across the dusty field with the sound of cheering boys in the air. The phone was still in the cupboard, but now he asked permission before using it. And when he did, he used it for schoolwork or to watch educational videos. It wasn't easy. Some nights, he felt the itch to sneak it out, to just play one more level. But he remembered the pain on his mother's face, the disappointment in his father's voice, and the way his grades had suffered. That memory was stronger than the temptation. One Sunday after church, the pastor preached about discipline. He said, "A man is not free because he can do anything he wants. He is free because he has learned to say no to what will destroy him." Daniel felt those words sink deep into his heart. By the end of the term, his report card showed improvement. Not perfect, but much better. When his father saw it, he didn't say much. He simply nodded and said, "Well done, Daniel. Keep going." And for Daniel, those two words, "keep going," felt like the greatest reward. It is not easy to change the path once your feet are deep in it. But with each day, each choice, each small victory, Daniel was learning that the best kind of game was the one called life, and he was determined to play it well. My children, gather closer. Let me tell you what Daniel finally learned and what you must never forget. When Daniel deleted the app, the phone suddenly felt lighter in his hands, almost as if a heavy spirit had left it. But deleting a game doesn't instantly fix the damage. It's like pulling weeds from a garden. The roots still hide under the soil. You must dig them out one by one. In those first few days, Daniel felt restless. He would pick up his phone without thinking, scroll through the home screen, and then remember the game was gone. It felt strange, empty, even. He realized how much of his life the game had swallowed. It had stolen his afternoons, his evenings, and sometimes even his sleep. It had stolen his focus during school lessons, his laughter during family time, and the trust in his parents' eyes. One Sunday afternoon, Daniel sat outside on the wooden bench in their small compound. The sun was gentle that day, and a faint breeze carried the smell of fried plantain from a neighbor's kitchen. Children laughed somewhere down the street, chasing a worn-out football. He watched them for a while and thought about how long it had been since he'd played with friends without a phone in his hand. That was when his father came to sit beside him. He didn't scold him this time. Instead, he said quietly, "Daniel, a man is the sum of how he spends his time. If you give your hours to foolishness, you will reap regret. But if you give your hours to learning and growing, you will reap a future you can be proud of." Daniel nodded slowly. He remembered an old African proverb his grandfather once said, "The child who spends all day chasing shadows will miss the sunset." It finally made sense. He had been chasing the shadow of an app while the real beauty of life, the sunset, was passing him by. He began to change, little by little. When his mother was cooking jollof rice, he stayed in the kitchen to help instead of hiding in his room. When the neighborhood boys played football in the dusty street, he joined them, feeling the warm earth under his feet instead of the cold glow of a screen. When his younger sister asked him to help her with homework, he took the time to explain, remembering how often he'd ignored her before. It wasn't easy. Temptation still called him sometimes, especially when he saw friends playing games on their phones. But Daniel reminded himself of what that path had cost him, and slowly the craving faded. My children, listen to me now. This is the lesson. A phone is like a knife. In the hands of a cook, it prepares food. In the hands of a careless child, it causes injury. The phone will serve you if you use it wisely, but if you let it control you, it will cut into your life, piece by piece, until you have nothing left. Parents, hear this too. Do not simply take the phone away. Guide your children toward better things. Teach them to balance technology with reading, helping at home, and speaking face to face. And children, do not wait until you lose something precious before you listen. Daniel lost trust, he lost focus, and he nearly lost his future, all because of a game that promised fun but delivered chains. Daniel's story ends with hope. His grades improved. His parents smiled at him again with pride. He discovered hobbies he didn't know he enjoyed, like sketching in his notebook, repairing broken radios with his uncle, and playing football until the streetlights came on. But most importantly, he found freedom. Not the kind of freedom that comes when you buy a new phone or download a new app, the kind of freedom that comes when you take control of your own time. So my children, remember this. The greatest game is life itself. Play it with wisdom, balance, and heart. Do not chase shadows. Do not let a glowing screen steal the sunlight from your days. Guard your time as you would guard your most valuable treasure. Because once time is lost, it never returns.